Hi, welcome to SHOWstudio. I'm very excited. Today we're going to be talking about Undercover, which is the first time we've ever done an Undercover panel. They are showing in Pitti for the second time, and it's the first time in 9 years, which is super exciting. They're also showing in conjunction with Takahiro Miyashita, so we're going to talk a little bit about them as well. But before we get started, let our panel introduce. Harriet, if we start with you.
I'm Harriet Verney, and I'm a journalist.
I'm Mandi Lennard, and I run a fashion consultancy called Mandi's Basement.
Hi, I'm Jake, and I'm a freelance writer and a PhD student.
Hi, I'm Jessica Bumpus, and I'm a freelance fashion journalist.
And I'm Georgie, I'm fashion editor from SHOWstudio. I've forgotten to introduce myself for the past 2 panels, so I just thought I'd get that in there. So what did everyone think? What was their initial reaction when they heard that Undercover was coming back to Pitti?
Cool.
No fanfare, no shock, no surprise?
I think
It's been a long time.
In the context of Pitti's kind of previous guest designers, I think it did kind of make sense that they have that cult following to kind of bring that into Pitti.
And I think, Pitti has now become, a place where these guest designers and sort of news points happen like that. So people look there to see something new and exciting, because it's more of, whereas in London menswear you get sort of maybe more outlandish creativity, what you get in Pitti is something that's more viable but also equally creative, because obviously it's sandwiched between London and Milan. Milan's more conservative with its menswear, but this is kind of the perfect halfway house where you can see sort of a laboratory of ideas, and if it works there, then you know that it viably can work.
Pitti's kind of the test spot for the
definitely.
avant-garde.
Yeah.
What did you think, Andy, when you...
I don't know whether I see it as a test spot. I think that Pitti really encourages freedom, and it's always been like that. I think one of the early people to show there was Rick Owens, and that was a very art-based piece. I've done a few things with them over the years, and the freedom that they give you is really inspiring. And I think what's amazing about Undercover showing after all this time is that it's not a tired thing, and that's testament to Jun Takahashi, because as a brand, I'm no less excited or not excited. It's a cool brand, and it never, in my mind, goes up or down. Since I first came across it when some of the kids in the Gimme 5 office in London before 2000 actually, I used to go in their office, and they used to have little things from Jun Takahashi. It was when before social media, and very few people were actually traveling to Tokyo for fashion, and there was a kind of international Sushi Tribe. It was kind of this network. Nigo from Bathing 8 was part of it, and the guy from Hysteric Glamour, and Jun Takahashi was the young little kid. And it's just really sweet and affecting that after all these years, he's just as cool as ever, just as relevant as ever. And I think that last night, it looked completely effortless, it looked really commercial. I think that he's going to take some of Raf's pie with this collection, and I'm just as excited about it as ever, really.
That's good. That's good. Makes for a good conversation. I want to talk a little bit, but you mentioned some of those amazing collaborations there, Mandy, because he is doing this pairing with the soloist Takahiro, which I think this is his first showing outside of Japan, which is exciting for him. But what do we think about, I think the phrase they've used is that Takahashi's kind of been like, he's my friend, I want to support him, I want to put him in the spotlight next to me, which is, I think, a very Japanese way of doing things. But what do we think about the introduction of Takahiro, and is Pitti the right place for him alongside Undercover? That's a bit of a loaded question, sorry everyone.
It's a mutual respect. That's the impression I get from it.
And it makes sense as well, because Pitti is essentially a trade show. So to have that as kind of like your European debut, I think it's the perfect place for it, because there's the element of collaboration, even though they kind of made the collection separately but then showed together. I do think it's good to kind of have that platform, because Pitti, they've always had the big names, so people do go. So I think it's one of those things where to launch your career in Europe is one of the perfect places.
Pitti's the place to do it.
Yeah, I think so.
What do we think of Pitti as a whole, as a place to show? Well, you mentioned it earlier, Jessica, as a place to kind of, I just said test spot, but I don't think that's the right phrase. It's kind of the halfway point of how to show your avant-garde, your flair. So Undercover's kind of the perfect person for Pitti. But previous big names have kind of been quite heavyweights. I think Undercover's in that same stature, but what do you think of people looking at the schedule being like, oh, okay, Undercover's potentially the only draw to Pitti, or is that complete farce? Is that something naive of me to say?
Undercover sort of, it means different things to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I mean, in Asia, it's sportswear and streetwear and big collaborations. And for me, it's like this sort of avant-garde, punk, quite British, like a couture house almost. But then also on the other hand, he's like this amazing businessman that goes to Pitti and he just sells clothes, because to have a business, you sell clothes. So it's funny seeing him at Pitti. It makes sense in some ways and in other ways.
But I
He's
also
quite
think
out
it's
of the
obviously
box.
it usually shows in Paris, and obviously everyone takes Paris very seriously. Like, that's the one, so it brings with it that weight. So I think whereas maybe in the past, other guest designers or collaborations maybe seemed not flash in the pan, but they were more just for press, or it was more of like a selling point. This just feels a bit heavier and weightier and serious,
Yeah.
and especially then teaming up with the soloist. That's really clever, because you're seeing sort of an established and then a new, and there's a real story around that. So I think it's a really clever way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. So should we have a little look at the collection? Well, let's just dive straight in. So there was no press release, but they said that they're calling upon kind of a space odyssey, and obviously the first thing we can see here is a spacesuit. They normally I always think of as Undercover as calling upon kind of the pretty and beauty, and then making it really dark and something a little twisted about it. But this just feels really fresh to me. What are your initial opinions? What are your initial thoughts?
And the back of them look like a Hannibal kind of reference. It's frightening.
I love that they kind of have that consistency with, for example, like covering the face and obscuring the identity. It's hella futuristic.
Yeah, very
I
futuristic.
think this bit that we're looking at is actually the sub-show finale. I mean, there was a main finale for both of them together that was
Right.
very orchestrated and choreographed, but that was the actual finale. But I think most of the collection isn't that look.
Oh, can we flick to the beginning of Undercover? Thank you very much. Oh, here we go. This is juicy stuff.
Yeah, this is great. I love this.
So it goes back to what you were saying there, Mandy. You're right in that this is instantly very commercial.
Yeah,
Very appealing.
It looks to me like he really enjoyed doing this collection. It was really easy, and it was like it's always really niche and underground, and this is him almost like putting his head above that commercial parapet. And I don't think that he's gone there for commercial reasons. I think that Pitti likely invited him, and organically he's thought, oh, let's do it with his friend. But, those sort of associations have been going on for years. I mean, when in the early days with Comme des Garçons, they actually sold chrome hearts in their store in Tokyo, and she's mentored Junya. And I think that there's lots of very genuine relationships that happen with newcomers. I think a lot of those designers in London that are coming through, a lot of are not super established, but more established. There's a lot of mutual affection, and they support each other
Yeah, I think
in a genuine way.
Yeah, definitely. Really nice to see.
Tim Jones is like that. He is in touch with a lot of young designers, and
Also, even that thing of how Yoji and Ray kind of debuted in Paris in a very kind of short time space, and also because Ray was the first person to kind of buy one of Undercover's pieces, I think it's really, really cool to kind of have that network.
She's a huge champion of his work.
Yeah, I think that she's actually supported their shop. They still have the shop in Tokyo, don't they, Undercover?
Did they do the Dover Street Market stuff as well?
They're in Dover Street Market, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think they actually contribute to quite a significant chunk
I
in the Asian
I think they might be involved in the business, because I know that I'd heard rumours probably about 10 years ago that the shop in Tokyo, it was a struggle to keep it going, and I'm sure that Comme des Garçons have supported that.
Okay.
Gossip.
Let's unpick the clothes a little bit here. So,
It feels like sort of a mix of lots of different funny tribes of men and women, doesn't it? Like this old Scottish widow, and then there's like a corduroy gent
love that.
in his wellies, and then there's like a Manchester pillhead.
those look like Uggs
Kind
in the
of.
middle there.
Yeah.
I love all the tartans as well.
Yeah.
And Charles Jeffrey has done that, and
Alton Towers goer there, number 30. On the water
What does it
slides.
say?
Very much so, yeah. It's very protective, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really good.
I think in both the shows, the first and then the other one, I say the other one because I'm less familiar with the other one, there's a bit of Massimo Osti vibes, you know, very early Stone Island. And it's all about protective and practical and, you know, almost like traditional protective garments have been studied. It looks like there's lots of influences there.
This feels like a life jacket. It's something quite anonymous and sort of political about it in a way, doesn't it? You know?
Quite a lot of the jackets kind of flicked round, so you know when they harness it up and you're wearing the Janus, that's not a word. Janus? Coming too soon, guys, Janus. Shirt on the back, so it's like harnessed.
Restrictive and
Yeah, super like strapped in, which I think we've seen a lot of lately, lots of like strapping in, slinging over the back, obscuring the face.
Craig Green.
Yeah, he's just steering away from that teeny bit as well. He's done that so much.
It looked kind of biohazard as well. And they had like all the weird like
There's
digital
definitely
apocalypse.
a biohazard going there.
And the gloves, I think the little rubber gloves, when you look further on in the show, the little rubber gloves with the actual normal collection, you know, less protective looks, they look really fresh as a fashion look anyway.
Yeah.
The different textures.
From a styling point of view too, where they had like the tweed suit with like the kind of rubber overcoat.
Yeah.
So this is the soloist with all that. He tends to do lots of these kind of slightly eerie, scarecrowy masks. I've seen quite a few of those from before. But do we think there's a connection between the two? I know they're two separate designers and I don't want to be reductive and lump them together, but they obviously, Undercovers is kind of calling upon space odyssey, and I think there's been a slight tone of dystopic future in a lot of the menswear shows recently. Do you think that both of them are trying to push a
This
message?
is like apocalyptic, isn't it? This is what you'd imagine people you'd see when everything goes tits up. They look really good.
They are.
Different sensibility.
Because they consistently, because for example, like Undercover Pulse in the British punk scene was inspired by like Sex Pistols, whereas Soloist seems very American in its reference points. But I do think there's definitely kind of some stylistic continuity, but I think it's just a case of the way that people wear clothes today. Like that whole juxtaposition between formal and informal, and
I think they complement one another really well because they are like, you know, completely different, but because I guess there's the meeting in the middle, like they're both fans of one another, they're both friends.
And it goes back to that mutual respect thing, because
Exactly.
apparently they only saw each other's shows 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Collections 2 days ago. They didn't plan this, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very confident. I think also, you know, fashion industry can be very insecure, and I think that if you feel you're doing what you were meant to be doing, you're kind of comfortable enough to enter into a situation where you're going to share your catwalk with somebody.
Yeah, and as you say, they're both incredibly confident and tight and separate and stand completely. It's nice that actually they're not too similar. Like I think they're only similar in the, you know, well they're not, but you know, just the way they've come together. But I like that they're both very different.
Do we know what music was playing?
I know for Undercover it was kind of like, I'm not going to do it, but it was like, God. It was like super space, like obviously like kind of like the clangers. That's the best way I can think of describing it. So lots of like dupes and dupes. Do we have, maybe there's a little video we can play to give you guys a, do we have any sound? Oh yeah, there you go. That's very faint.
But that's visually great. Like
Semi-silent.
you're there.
Semi-silent.
The catwalks at Pitti are so long. I think that when you're watching it, as the models walk down, they kind of dissipate into the ether at the end.
They literally
And I think, you know, with that illuminated section, it must have been quite stunning to have been there.
I quite like that he has this kind of tartans and checks and kind of Ugg boots meets hiking boots, and then suddenly that morphs into these kind of space dudes at the end. I really love that. Do we think, how commercial, comfortable do we think this is?
Which one?
Well, let's go with Undercover. Let's go with Undercover.
Very,
Incredibly,
yeah.
incredibly so.
I want it all, and even this morning my friend messaged me and was like, I want a fleece suit now.
And actually, that's one of the things that I didn't like about the show.
Yeah.
The fact that it had so many, must-have pieces. It's almost like, oh no,
You're worried
more
they're
shops are going to sell it. Oh no. more people-
Yeah, that's true actually, yeah.
Kind of have a kind of little, I think, if you're into Undercover, you don't see people wearing it, and it's kind of a very low-key thing, and I kind of feel
part of the allure.
you feel quite smug in that little sort of
You saw it, yeah.
Almost,
They did a good sales pitch. It was a very good selling collection, wasn't it? Good
Yeah.
styling.
I don't imagine that someone like Jun Takahashi would go to Pitti with the intention to sell, and do a commercial collection. It's not his sensibility, and I think also that does a disservice to Pitti because they're very much about creativity, and they've got incredible credentials and roll call of people that they've done it. They've reached out to incredible people over the years, and it's just got this amazing reputation. Also, when you go to Florence, I mean, I know that London's earlier now, it's even earlier, but it's not like all the shops in London are celebrating London fashion events. But when you get to Florence, I mean, the shop windows, and they've actually got the stock ready. It's the first city that you go to where they've got the new collections in early. It's really quite a thing for all the men who they get really dressed up. I mean, that's a bit cliche, all that part of the scene, but it is really quite incredible what happens in Florence.
Also that thing that I think Undercover have done really good collaborations. So for example, they've done the kind of Supreme collaboration. They just did the thing with Judy Blame. So
I
it
love
almost
that collaboration.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I'm really into that.
But it almost feels like they don't need to have a commercial mainline because they have so many other. It feels like they can kind of maintain that creativity and take a risk on something that might not sell as well. I mean, I'm sure this will because there are loads of really cool things.
Collaborations are really organic as well. They're all like their own kind of...
I think organic really is the word to kind of sum up that collection, because although it is commercial and there are all those must-have pieces, you look at it and it just, you like it because it's great. There's nothing contrived about it. It is, just great, and you want it just because it sort of works. So, yeah, I think organic is kind of...
He does always say that he designs the menswear particularly, the women's wear slightly more.
Yeah, that's not so much.
He does say that the menswear, he literally just designs what he would want to wear. So it's very much just thinking, I don't think...
A lot of passionate menswear designers would say that about what they do.
Yeah, and I think we're right in saying the term organic. It's just, I don't think he's ever got money on the brain, and he says openly, I'm not a good businessman.
But ironically, the thing is that that is why he will make the money, because men traditionally, are potentially, designing for men is different, obviously, to women, and so if he's comfortable with what he's designing, that means that other people will be comfortable wearing it, and that's where the money comes from in menswear, because you don't want to do anything that scares them off too much or is too boring, or there are, it's a fine balance of getting it just right, I think. So
I think there's still a lot of scope to take risks in menswear as well, because I think even with things like London Menswear Fashion Week being like an actual thing, I think it all still feels quite nascent, which means that there are some collections that feel really exciting because it's like you can see it progressing and you can see it kind of becoming more legitimate and becoming a little bit more creative and a little bit more experimental.
I think London was a good example of that this season. It just felt really fun and really good-hearted, and it felt different. It didn't feel too commercial.
I think that's actually a problem with the way that fashion weeks are going, though, in that the young designers that are coming through, they reflect what's happening in culture and the youth, and they're getting the attention, whereas the big fashion houses are really struggling to actually show creativity that's kind of real and not forced and not gratuitous. And that definitely happened at this fashion week.
Yeah.
You get quite a lot of performance now, don't you? I think there's that thing where almost the sense of fashion shows being a sense of performance art, there's almost always now that element of it being more than just men walking down a runway. I really like it. It's really interesting to watch.
It's for the Insta moment, isn't it? It's developed into a spectacle because obviously now it needs to...
But it happened with women's wear a long time ago. It's time for men's wear to have that kind I
love that kind of...
Yeah, me
that's
too.
why I love fashion.
And Molly Goddard, who sorry to talk about a women's designer, but Molly Goddard, when she showed at the BFC show space, but she really pushed their production to actually put some uneven surfaces, and there was kind of a performance within a show.
That was a fab show.
And that just reflected so well on her sensibility as a designer, and also social media, and you know.
Well, it sort of reminds us why we have to have fashion shows. Otherwise, if they become really dull, we might as well just watch it all on Instagram, or it might just be a look. But you know, they have to be a performance. It has to be a show.
It doesn't have to be a show. It can be a presentation or
Yeah, it just has
a
to be
live
something
installation,
tactile, but-
like when Grace Wells Bonner did her, you know, live tableaus, things like that.
I think presentations have come on like
They
leaps
have,
and bounds.
they really have. But I think
So
that's
strong.
the thing as well. Like you notice as you go through the shows and you get to Paris, like it, you know, in London obviously you have them too, but it just escalates and escalates and escalates. And I think that's really set a precedent for people elsewhere sort of changing what they do.
I do want to talk about social a little bit, because it's interesting that we're talking about kind of shows and fanfares and putting yourself out on social and that kind of Insta moment. But Undercover's very demure on Instagram, very calculated, but in a going back to that word, organic way. And I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but the last kind of spaceman-y looks are great for Instagram, but you know that it was created in this kind of really honest, organic way. What do we think about their social? Because I don't think...
I want that lamp.
Your window
I saw that this morning and I thought, why did I miss that?
They're not making anything for social media. They're this kind of like underground, well, not underground.
Well, I think that makes
His personality. That's
Yeah,
just him
exactly.
having an Instagram like we'd have an Instagram. You know, it's
Yeah.
not orchestrated. It's just who he is.
And they kind of have this, I'm putting words in everyone's mouth here, they have this fanfare in the clothes, in the fact that it's just them putting across their personality. It's him putting across his personality, which I think is really nice.
But you believe it and you know it and it's convincing.
Yeah, it's real.
That pop-up shop, I think, is at the moment in Tokyo, isn't it? It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think also as we just move towards the point of saturation, I think it's nice for designers to kind of step back, and because it's really boring if you just see designers being like, oh, here's my new thing. And obviously there's like an element of that. But the fact that it's one of those things where now people have started to see much more than ever, especially with like sponsored posts and stuff, people see social media as a business.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice for designers to kind of step back from that. And obviously it has the advertisements and stuff, but
It's genuine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's the word I was thinking.
But also it has like a cult following, as we were saying before. So it's it doesn't need to do anything beyond what it already successfully was to have that.
That's the thing. It's a cult brand. It's so established as a cult, and it's sustained that cultness. But this show is kind of, I think, a little bit above the parapet. I mean, I'm excited for him, for his brand recognition and the scope and the opportunities that can bring, that widen the. But it's hard for a designer, when they get to that level where, are they going to take it a step further? Are they going to expand what they do? How can they keep it? I think this is something that Kim Jones probably does really well at Louis Vuitton. And we were talking about the women's show, about how the twins, the Shining in the women's show, how the last look is the one that was all over Instagram, and because it's got the kind of stitching coming down, it implies the blood and what have you. But when you actually look at every look in that show, the precision and the exhaustive detail that has gone into every pairing, that is completely an art installation as a show, and it's almost like.
That was the least interesting look, really, for me.
Yeah, that's the fodder for Instagram, and it's no disservice to Jun Takahashi, and I think everyone has that, and I think that the astronauts in that semi-finale were probably added to the whole theatre of the spectacle if you were there. And yes, it's an easy Instagram thing, but yeah, there's plenty of other stuff that's going to pop up on social media once everyone calms down from the astronauts.
I think that's the thing. You can have that buzz, but knowing that everything else is equally as worth its weight and equally has the push.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting because, going back to the women's wear one, this is, people were just, fingers on buzzers trying to get those pictures, and because that show was so insta fodder, it was so social, because they all came out as twins and paired, and you just couldn't take pictures fast enough. So it's interesting that the women's wear is so much more outlandish and extravagant and look at me and I don't know, blatantly weird or, you know.
Really wearable still as well. And the accessories have always been incredible. But isn't it funny, though, that this was one of the strongest women's collections, and we've probably seen one of the, you know, a really, really strong men's one too. It's exciting. But I imagine that when it gets to retail, there will be lots of things that weren't in that show.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Also, I think Undercover has like a massive legacy on Tumblr. Like, I first saw Undercover on Tumblr because I used to be like all over. But yeah, like some of the early campaigns are so incredible. And I think even just things like the typeface and the collaborations that they've done, like, I think it's strange now that people, at least for me, the first thing that I found out about was early Undercover, because their early visuals were so strong that it almost has that. And like you said, that thing of like people not knowing about it and it being like a new thing, I think that's where I think that Undercover will do really well, because it constantly has a backlog of people posting archive campaigns and stuff alongside the new stuff, so it's just building a brand and then moving towards the collaboration. But it's almost like you can buy into a piece of that heritage by buying like the super
New stuff.
Yeah, by buying the collaborations. I think it's one of those things where you feel like you're buying into a brand.
That Supreme collaboration was so good.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It was really, it was such a tight capsule.
Have you got, is it in your wardrobe already, Mandy?
Yes.
It's from this whole collection.
Cushion.
Before we went
Got that.
Got that, wearing that, got that.
Lots of, oh yeah, got that.
On your
Got the
sofa.
black cushion. But the tartan one looks nice. I might have a look on Grail tonight.
I think that is really lovely that what you were saying, Mandy, is that the women's wear has been so strong, this men's wear show is really lovely and strong, and that if you didn't know of Undercover, why not? But if you didn't know of Undercover and you looked at the Pitti show, you can tap into this amazing, rich archive. You're kind of you can get lost in the collaborations, and then you can suddenly start digging and finding out all about the.
When did it start?
Age.
Yeah.
It's 25 years
Because
old.
that's what I'm so shocked about. Because you sent us some facts that wasn't familiar with the history, and I became aware of it. I think just before 2000. To see it was like 1990. That is an incredible legacy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when he is very much regarded as an incubating designer, it's quite phenomenal, really.
Yeah.
Testament to him.
But I think now that might start happening with the Soloist, because it's like the Soloist had a life in the label that you were saying before, didn't
Number
it?
9, yeah.
So it's like, I feel like now it kind of gives people that catalyst to look
point.
back into their archives and say, because I think their debut was like, the Soloist was 2010, but there was some pictures and they were like, they're really sick.
But it's almost like, if you consider that, yeah, now we are in this sort of social media age, so before fashion was so closed off, so you wouldn't necessarily know about Undercover because if you weren't sort of a dedicated fan, or you know, whereas now it's almost like brands maybe in some ways have to slightly relaunch themselves again and put themselves out there to be part of the wider dialogue, because you know, it was so much harder to find this information before, but now you need to sort of be a part of it.
Digital rebirth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because otherwise you wouldn't know exactly the sort of heritage and the history. And again, you know, when you get to Paris, that's where, you know, it's all the heavyweights are. And if you don't know that, then they need to kind of communicate that so that people now understand their worth in fashion.
Undercover's like 90s menswear was brilliant. It was like you can really hear the music behind it. It was very British. It was very Radiohead and
Definitely.
punk and.
I always think of Radiohead when I look at
Me too. And like Manchester boys and baggy suits. It's really, really sexy and really cool. I like that.
Even the Soloist like still has like all this music and stuff on their website, and like
Yeah.
a big part of the collaboration
Yeah.
was that kind
Is,
of
yeah,
like
music.
the music and
I think those designers in Japan, you know, the kind of little niche scene that they're into as well there, and the little clubs that they go to, and they all listen to this very specific music.
Tokyo Sex
quite amazing.
Pistols. That's my favourite.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's so great.
And that he did lots of and what's his nickname? It's after Johnny Rotten, isn't it? Doesn't he?
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah,
He's got a nickname like Johnny Rotten.
June. His nickname is after Johnny Rotten because he loves him so much, and with his band, the Tokyo Sex Pistols. It's so funny.
Actually, can we go back to Undercover just for a split second? The show. I want to see if we can spot any straight up music references in here.
It's rave.
Yeah, the
Definitely.
hats.
Yeah.
The coats are so strong, aren't they? I mean, you know, buyers are just going to be going
Yeah, I mean, that's
nuts
not like
about
Liam
that.
Gallagher written all over it.
Yeah.
And I love that cape as well. I went to a
Invisible poncho.
Kahinda Wiley exhibition recently at the Stephen Friedman Gallery, and there was a room with screens over all the walls, and it was like water and beach. and the models went under the water and they were filmed, and that cape really depicts that installation.
Are these literally stills?
It's like Jarvis
from Space
Cocker
Odyssey?
kind of brownie corduroy sweat.
Yeah. It's got quite a lot of Britpop
Yeah.
about it, I think. This is great with the you've got the spaceman print here, and then of course they came to life at the end. So,
There we go. What does that say? Human error.
Bit of the streets.
Yeah, that's very the street. Oh, you're right on the gloves. Those are fab. I'd love to see this in an editorial.
It's just really good.
It's just really strong.
And it's like also sometimes it's like you'll have the section of the show that feels like it was made to sell, and then like the showpiece. But I love that they have had kind of like the spaceman prints and stuff, because it all feels like it should be together. It's not just for the sake of it.
It's very well put together and stuff. And like even this sort of fuzzy jacket over that is really a great mix.
That leather coat's
Very
amazing.
much you can take it apart. And
It's slightly
There's
flared.
a fuzzy suit, I think, in it, a brown fuzzy suit that I love.
and at the end, the amazing like lilac dressing gown. That's really cool.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
It's so comfortable.
I think it's definitely a good sign that we're all window shopping.
And also, these are all the kind of colours that everyone's into at the moment, the primary colours and the kind of outerwear vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that's the kind of what customer wants to buy at the moment.
And there's still elements of that whole kind of 70s colour palette, like the brown corduroy and the mustard jackets and stuff. So coming
That
into
corduroy suit is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I like that fireman's outfit,
I'll have
policeman,
that.
fireman.
And the wellies as well.
So
Oh my God,
good.
the wellies are incredible.
Well, because also, like, it just feels like it would all be perfect for, like, festival season.
The wellies are amazing.
Yeah, I can definitely see number 50 is a Glastonbury goer.
A white
That would be June
Very chic.
Takahashi's worst. I think that would
Yeah,
be
I
his
agree.
worst nightmare.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, someone
like,
at
no, don't do that.
Stop. Yeah.
It's not why I designed this.
And there's that, so the collection was called Order Disorder, so they've got that Order Disorder on the wellies. And then I think the soloist was mirrored, so it was Disorder, Order.
I think a lot of the words are continuations of dialogue he's had with other collections as well.
Yeah, definitely.
There's always a yin and yang,
Always a balance.
or a contradiction of names.
There's the Chewbacca suit.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? The gloves are really creepy.
So creepy. Imagine shaking that hand.
What do you think they are? Latex or leather or?
Like, you know,
really
when you're on a building site and you're having to...
Protect your hands when
they're
you're kind of
protected
sawing a
by-
chair.
Yeah,
It's actually
as you
quite-
do.
You know, that's my
But
Sunday.
there's a little twin set there as well.
There's loads of really good accessories, actually. The bags and the hats are great.
The hats are really strong.
I mean, a lot of it's really all in the details of it, and you know, like those are just pulled in there, and again with the styling, it's all these amazing different sort of tropes that are put together, and all just suddenly you're like, oh, that why does that all make total sense? So again, it's I guess the disorder order, but you know, it's really clever. It's really clean as well.
These are amazing too. These kind of like ambiguous like skirt trousers.
Yeah, I think they're great. They don't look feminine whatsoever, do they?
It doesn't look contrived. You know how androgyny is such a big
Yeah.
thing. Like it feels like it's just a really cool silhouette that like I would absolutely want to wear.
Feels like actually authentic.
Yeah.
Natural progression for him, I think.
And also the whole kind of like shrunken tweed. Like it does look like 90s Scottish widow like.
Doesn't it?
shrunken
Auntie
wash.
so-and-so, yeah. Androgynous auntie.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that tartan one up close because it kind of looks,
Crinkled as well.
yeah,
Boil washed.
oil washed, yeah. Definitely auntie vibes there. Ruined many a jumper, thanks. Yeah, I think this is amazing. So what do we want to see next from Takahashi? And Takahiro, for that matter.
I want to see more from Takahiro. I think the soloist, like, when I was looking at some of the stuff, it's really cool. And my first thought was like, why do I not know about this? Do you know what I mean? It feels like one of those things where it's kind of I think this show is a really good introduction. I think there's a lot of scope for him to use it as like a springboard.
For the next level of it.
Yeah,
Well, I
completely.
think, yeah, because with the number 9, that was really quite cool. Again, I've got lots of friends that are really madly into it. And so, yeah, he's known, but not massively known, and it kind of needs that reintroduction because he was kind of the forerunner for a lot of the sort of streetwear and almost like Vetements vibes that we've been seeing because it's, you know, about real wear and that was already happening. So I think, yeah, it's a bit like, why don't we know about this? But we're used to seeing that aesthetic already, but that shows that, you know, he was already around and doing stuff and it made its impact.
That was like the blueprint.
Exactly, yeah.
What do you guys think?
Well, number 9 was really expensive. Do you remember? It was at the time. It was incredibly expensive, and it was in very luxury shops. So it wasn't like the equivalent of streetwear now, where it's and I think that it does pop up on the auction sites a lot. Well, from time to time, and it's still really sought after, and there's a lot of respect there. So I think that's a really good. There's still a huge following.
I hope this is a bit of a springboard platform for him. I hope this maybe Paris next.
Which is what Pitti is, you know.
It's interesting now as well, for example, like with streetwear kind of starting out, or like streetwears and like tracksuits and stuff like that starting out, and then now they've kind of been elevated. So it's now like people are paying like $1,000. Do you know what I mean? So
But I think it's also like evolved somewhat, because I don't know, when you think of like the term streetwear now, it can kind of encompass so much. Like it comes a lot down to the styling.
also, so many designers hate that term.
Yeah, exactly.
So many designers hate that term, yeah.
Because it's like, what is it
Mazar hates
anymore?
it.
Well, it's a bit classist in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I say it all the time, but
But we've gone
feels like
beyond
getting
that.
underserviced.
We've gone beyond that anyway, haven't we? That's the normal clothes that people are wearing.
Exactly,
Even,
yeah, exactly.
even in their day-to-day jobs. And also, I think a lot of people that wear fashion, their jobs now are lifestyle choices. I think that a lot of people almost, dare I say, choose professions where they can dress, where they want to express themselves, and that seems to be the norm. But what amazes me is that, all these capsules keep dropping, or the drop, these products, sometimes they're not publicised.
Yeah.
And it's like the panic of people wanting to acquire these things. They can't get them because often they're released online, and a lot of people have got those apps where they try and get them, or they have to get them on the auction sites. But then I almost think to myself, the sort of people that really agonise about getting them are quite young, and how are they affording this? And isn't it
it's a business thing, isn't it? I read that article about the teenagers, all 15, and it's a business, and they buy it, sell it on in the playground.
My youngest nephew, his kids in his class at school, I mean, they're probably about 14. They have proper businesses where they resale.
My brother does
these
it at
things.
Palace. You buy sort of £70 t-shirt,
Yeah.
go back to Ross
It's a
and Warren,
thing.
sell it for 90.
Yes.
Yeah,
Great.
we have a model that comes in that literally tells all about all the trainers. About all the trainers and such. He makes a killing.
Yeah.
He makes an absolute
You
fortune.
have to queue for such a long time.
Dedication.
So dedicated.
I was reading something that I think was on Complex a while ago. I just was doing some research this week, and it was how to beat, when things do appear online, how to get in there, and how to give yourself the best possible chance. And one of the things that was really missing from all the tips was get friendly with the assistant in the shop.
Yeah, it's true.
Suck up to the right people.
The right people.
Well, because people do like queue around the block for like a new Supreme drop, and they've done like bricks and like soup bowls. And,
Does anyone know anyone who owns the brick?
I've got the brick.
Do you have the brick? That's
How did you
amazing.
get your hands on
They
that?
sent me a brick.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, good.
there was a video of
I
somebody.
love my
like,
brick.
Do you have it on the mantle?
My nephew's got it in his bedroom.
Yeah, he loves it. Yeah, that's very nice of you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying I gave it to him. He owns it.
On a shared basis.
Do you think people do that with Undercover, though, to the same extent? Obviously, Undercover.
Yes, no, the Supreme thing, that was very, I mean, I got that coat with the slogans on it, and oh my God, I had to stop wearing it. It was,
Why, were people coming up to you? and trying to
No,
jump
but I
you?
really felt like I could have had it ripped off my back.
Really?
Yeah,
That one?
yeah.
I do think Undercover has like a lot of little, because the thing is, like, if you are young, you still want to buy into a brand, but you have to save to do it. For example, like the Moschino, like the dolls and like the teddy bears. I think it's one of those things where if you have something that isn't just the clothing, something that is kind of like a lower price point, say for example like the brick or the soup bowl, I think people still want to buy into a brand, but I think
It's lifestyle as well, isn't it? They're
Yeah.
buying into, not just clothes.
it's that whole thing about cultural currency, isn't it? And it's like, you look like you have really cool taste. Everyone's
And
like,
yeah, you get to sort of stamp inanimate objects, and it's like the rise of the inanimate object elevated to this sort of luxury cult status.
Undercover's actually really great at inanimate objects.
The Undercover Supreme, it wasn't that expensive. But again, I think it's quite sad really with a lot of these things where the people who could afford it, who would absolutely love it, can't get it. They still can't get it.
I'd be interested to see if Undercover, obviously with being sold in Dover Street Market already, like for example, like Off-White recently announced the kind of like affordable range, and I think there is so much scope now to do kind of, you know, diffusion lines or lines of t-shirts and things that people can actually buy into. So I'd be interested to see if Undercover kind of followed that business model, because it's always been quite elevated. Like obviously we've been shown in Paris, and
I think the customer though will go for the t-shirts. I think there are accessible points. I don't think they will do that.
Yeah.
So I think they've kind of got that within it already. You know, like those little silly wallets, you know, that are in the shape of something. No, but they are. You know, I'm not into those. But there's t-shirts. There are affordable things.
There's a lot of access
With
points.
com as well, like everyone buys, you know, the wallet,
Yeah.
and that just goes, okay, you've got good tech. That's an instant, like easy fix.
Okay, you've got good taste.
Supposedly, we hope, we don't know, but it's and the t-shirts too. Yeah.
The little pins and stuff as well.
Really? Someone's looking for
They were quite expensive actually.
I'd like a sock. I wouldn't mind a sock from the
Just the one.
Yeah. Maybe long stockings.
Yeah, it does look like there's quite a few points in this that you can come into, and the Judy Blame thing, as we were speaking earlier, has just come out, and I think those are quite an easy. Well, I don't actually know how much they are, so I don't want to speak too soon, but I think they are quite an easy access point if you wanted to tap into the Undercover and have
also
that
like the
label.
hats and the gloves and stuff. It's like they're things that I can imagine people like really saving up for.
But the thing is that I don't think they do a big output on quantity. So I've noticed that in Dover Street Market, it's quite a big area of the store that they've got in the basement. But it's not like there's loads of stock there. You know, when it arrives, it goes very quickly. But also you've got to consider that, like another brand, there'd be a lot of stock in the reserve. But I don't think there's lots of pieces. But I don't know whether that's the buyer's intention. I think it's more that they don't produce a huge amount, which keeps it exciting too. And this collection, again, looks like the sort of collection where buyers will be all over it and want to buy it, but I just wonder how much they will produce. And then you think, well, what about the production? How can they actually cope with an increase in the production?
Because you've got like the export fees as well, haven't you? Like they were saying that was a big part of why their kind of core market really is still Japan.
Yeah, I've heard that they struggle quite a lot with the
imports.
tapping into Europe because of the import. Well, fingers crossed this will be the push in the right direction.
Well, because buyers will be a pity. Like it's one of those things. It's like the kind of buyer's holy grail because there are so many brands, and it's like, you know, it is a really, really cool brand, and it deserves that big European push.
And I think Pitti also, it's very not networking, but it's very social, and it's a real scene, and there's lots of exchange of ideas, and you know, some buyers who weren't familiar with certain things, you know, they all share that's where people start the chatter for the season and know who they're into or who the buyers they look up to are into. Because, you know, you forget that a lot of stores will come to London and they go straight to Dover Street and they look around it and they want to see, you know, how they can replicate that vibe in their stores or what labels they're selling so that they can try and get them. And
It's kind of like putting your ear to the ground.
Yeah, very curatorial, isn't it? Curatorial. It's like that thing of like Dover Street Market being that kind of place to kind of hone like all the established designers, but also to kind of put in like a few lesser known names, and then people kind of like, it's like that cult seal of approval almost, and that kind of normally.
Is the Gucci fine dining restaurant in Florence?
Yeah.
So that's just open. How long is it open for? Do we know?
I'm not actually sure.
Okay.
But it's literally just
not long.
Yeah,
It's
I think
very
it's
small.
happened this week
It's
with
about
Pitti,
16 people or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It looks
so
really
that's I think testament to Pitti as well, the fact that Gucci would think to do that.
Yeah, I think, it's obviously, it as a thing is growing bigger. And
I think there's a big Gucci exhibition as well on at the moment, so that kind of made sense too.
Yeah, I think you're right. Everything I've read on Pitti is literally that it's just going from strength to strength to strength, which is great for Undercover. Just to summarise, to wrap up, to say goodbye, what do we want from Undercover for next season? Do we want more men's shows, not another 9 years to wait, or what would we most like to see from the brand?
I think it would be interesting if the men's and women's were shown together, as lots of people are doing. I would be interested to see that. I mean, personally, I prefer the menswear, so I don't know. I would be interested to see if that's a possibility or a thought, or
I think it'd be a shame to do an overload of shows. Like, I like the idea that there's been a 9-year gap. You know, you can have too much of a good thing, and if it was too often and too frequent, like a Gucci kind of scenario, I wonder if we'd get a bit. Come on, it's very nice, but
Bit Mandi hand wave.
yeah, Mandi hand wave to that.
What do you want?
I've got no qualms. You know, I think there's a great trust and respect with Jun Takahashi, and it's almost like whatever he does is fine. You know, he'll do what's right for him. He doesn't. I don't think he'd ever feel the pressure of what he should be doing. He's not like that.
That's quite right.
I agree. I think men's and women's. I think that often shopping spaces can be quite hostile for a lot of people because it's so gender divided. So I'd like to see the kind of retail model moving towards that, because for some of the silhouettes it just makes sense, and people don't shop within their gender anyway. So I think it's just time to kind of push that and try and make that the blueprint.
Excellent. Well, we're all very impressed. So should we give him a round of applause as we say out?